Sweet drinks, spicy food. That's Malaysian way.
Yeah, exactly.
Makan with tangan, eat with the hands.
Yep.
Nice nails, by the way. You won't be having banana leaf with those nails.
No, I won't. I'm gonna turn a whole different color.
How have you overcome it? Because you present yourself as a very positive and confident person.
It was very hard. It was especially because the main reason was my parents, who are meant to be these unconditional figures of support.
Was it affecting your life at school? Was it affecting your relationship?
It's like my whole world would come crashing down.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Inwords&Onwards podcast. We're going to be talking about personal development, life journeys. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics. We'll have some hosts. We'll have one host. We'll have a few guests. Our first guest is Miss Savera, and she's a Choi Kwando instructor from Adapt Choi Kwando in London. And she's here in Malaysia, sharing a little bit of her knowledge with us and also learning from us at Choices Choi Kwando. And the podcast is not just going to be about Choi Kwando topics, but for the first one, I think it's something we have in common, something we can talk about quite a lot. And then going forward, we'll be talking about serious topics, but I don't want to always talk about them in too serious a way because it's not really in my nature. It'd be quite difficult. So anyways, we've got Savera here. Savera, good morning.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's quite an experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very new.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit different. So today we'll introduce you a little bit more. So Savera, you come from London.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Born and bred?
Born and bred in London.
Born and bred in South London.
Exactly.
Cool. And so for people who don't really know London, well, everybody knows London, but maybe they don't know South London. So tell us a little bit. You work in Central.
So I work in Central London.
Yeah.
I grew up in South London, went to school in South London.
Yeah.
Still live in South London.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've lived my whole life there. And then, haven't really moved around London much.
Yeah. Cool. And this is your first time in Asia.
Not in Asia.
Oh, my mistake. You're right, because you went to Pakistan when
But I was 1 year old, so I don't really count it.
All right. It's the first
But-
time you remember it.
First time I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Malaysia.
your first time in Malaysia.
Exactly, yeah.
Malaysia's not a bad place, is it?
No, it's very lovely. Especially the weather being consistent compared to London.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. You won't have
Tell me
a
about
random wave of coldness when it's
Yeah.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Last month I was speaking with my brother-in-law. He told me that it snowed. It snowed in Scotland.
Oh yeah.
In June. Snowed. And then it was hot the same day.
I don't know what's going on with the weather.
Oh, what is happening?
But I've also heard that it's raining as well, and it's June. So
I don't know, man, but here, that's one of the things I love. The day's the same length. It's still bright at 2:00 in the morning right now in back home.
yeah.
It's day's the same length.
Mhm.
The rain, when it rains, it really rains,
It
doesn't
really
it?
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God I've only been caught in it once, so it's been okay.
Yeah, you just got kind of plan around it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I like Malaysia. It's been a while now.
Yeah.
And the food, Malaysia very famous for the food.
Lovely food here.
Yeah. You know what? Some people, they can't hack it. I've had people come and they have McDonald's every day. Yeah, it's a travesty. I'm glad that
They stick to their home comforts.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, if they've grown up on really Western food,
Yeah.
then they're not used to having spices and that.
But I think that's the whole experience of coming to a new country, is if you want to embrace the culture as well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Sweet drinks, spicy food. That's
Yeah.
Malaysian way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Makan with tangan, eat with the hands.
Yep.
Nice nails, by the way. You won't be having banana leaf with those nails.
No, I won't. I'm gonna turn a whole different color.
Right. So today we actually going to talk about some other stuff. Adversity. That's our topic for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just introduce the topic a little bit. What does it mean? Maybe you can start us off. To you, Especially for people who are listening. Adversity is very, very subjective, right? So regardless of your background, regardless of your nationality, where you're at, where you come from, people experience adversity, right? So can you start us off a little bit about what's your view on adversity in the most general sense?
Well, think about the definition of it. It's a rough, unpleasant situation in your life. But I also think it's one of those significant moments in your life where you learn a lot of lessons, because it can make you very emotionally vulnerable, because it's one of those situations that can bring that out of you. So I think it's an event in your life which isn't a particularly pleasant one, and it allows you to learn a lot of lessons and improve yourself as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's going to develop you either way, right?
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
exactly.
Yeah. I think adversity, for at least for myself, I brought it on myself. Like sometimes, you bite off more than you can chew, or you take on the mountain rather than trying to move the small stones.
Yeah,
And adversity sometimes is due to our circumstance, and sometimes it's our own action. Sometimes we make mistakes, have to deal with the consequences, and then sometimes when we take on ambitious things, we end up realizing, snap.
done a bit more than we can handle.
Yes,
Yeah.
a little bit, yeah. Cool. So, in terms of Choi Kwando,
Yeah.
right? So, Choi Kwando is a martial art. Its unique aspect really comes from its founder, and that's how it gets its name, and the story of the founder. And Choi Kwando was founded because of the founder's adversity. Right. It was
Yeah.
founded because he was one of the original masters of Taekwondo.
Yep.
And due to many things, essentially overtraining. Overtraining in anything is going to have negative consequences. Specifically, the training methodology of the time, and the fact that he was hardcore, man. It was really hardcore.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be hardcore in something like Taekwondo, especially old school pioneering Taekwondo in the military, that's going to take a toll.
For sure.
Physically. And then the physical effects, mind and body, they're so linked. If you're really taking on significant physical adversity, that's going to affect you mentally and emotionally as well.
Exactly.
So Grandmaster Choi developed a new series of movements, right? And I think that's, for him, the genius of what he's done is in the movements. Being gentle in the body. I feel great when I do Choi Kwando.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's like the first and foremost unique thing, is doing the moves. And then around that, there's a culture and a set of principles, which ultimately are about the individual's journey and the communal experience, more than overcoming adversaries in the flesh. It's not about fighting people and beating people, right? And I think that's quite different to other styles. Most styles, especially the ones that are very popular nowadays, are about fighting people in these artificial scenarios. And Choi Kwando is definitely not about that.
Exactly.
So, so Choi Kwando, I think I wouldn't say that we're like uniquely suited to talking about adversity, because it's such a universal human experience. But it is certainly central to Choi Kwando people, right? In terms of like where the martial art comes from, where we come from, and also why we do what we do. So we first and foremost, we are students of Choi Kwando, and it will have helped us. And we can talk a little bit about that today, how it's helped us in our personal journeys, but also it helps us in when we're teaching. We're not just teaching students, but we're mentors, we're role models, and as much as we have students, we also have disciples.
Especially when teaching like younger children as well. They see the instructor as someone that they want to be like, and
Absolutely.
maybe they can even not even in techniques, that maybe it's the way that you present yourself, the way that you carry yourself. It's some, especially if it's like in a confident way, it might be like, okay, I want to be like that as well. So it's like a really good way for them to relate to someone as well.
And the way that we make them feel.
Exactly.
On the simply on the physiological level, when you lead someone through exercise in a safe environment, in a structured way, you release endorphins, right? You get endorphins from exercising. Plus, you have the communal experience, which is very positive. You have structured socialization, which for neurodivergent people is massive.
Yeah.
Putting some structure to it helps so much, especially your autistic spectrum. And then furthermore, we always talk about this lockdown generation, COVID generation, whatever, and they lacked on socialization and they were isolated and so on, or they're stuck in their phones, they don't know how to relate to people. You put people in straight lines, put them hierarchy based on the color of their fighting pajamas and the belts that they wear.
Sort of know exactly what to do and how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You help them out so much.
Exactly.
You remove the pressure on having those soft skills. You have a little code, basically. You learn the code.
Yeah.
Of, oh, this is how I'm supposed to speak to this person, and so on and so forth.
Especially being surrounded with a lot of people with the same, like on the same level, you kind of can always go to them to see how you should be, like how you want to be as well, by the people around you as well. That makes sense.
Do you mean in the sense like you can ask questions about things that you wouldn't normally be able to ask questions
Yeah,
about?
like for example, if someone's just joined the school and they don't really know like what to do and how to do it, then I feel like almost everyone I've met is always willing to help. And you know, if you're a student and you talk to another student, you sort of know exactly how to act in terms of being a martial artist in the dojang.
Yeah, dojang is a Korean word that we use. I love that word. I love it. And it means like dojo in Japanese, or house of discipline.
Yeah.
Casa de la Disciplina is what they call it in Argentina, which I think is quite sick. All right, cool. So yeah, I think like you said, the role model aspect, right, you were referring to in terms of the instructor, regardless of how they kick and punch, it's about a lot more than that. And the way that the instructor carries himself, and I think the way that they lead the group.
Exactly.
It's the relationship between the instructor and the students, the mentor and the mentee, the leader and the disciple, I think is extremely powerful.
Especially because it's in a martial arts setting. Like when people first hear martial arts, it could go either way. It could go like, oh, I'm going to learn self-defense. Or it could also be connotations of fighting, violence. Like some people can have negative associations with it. So I think when you actually go to a school and you have an instructor who knows all about it, but they're kind, they're reassuring. Of course, still in a martial art instructor way, but you kind of build trust with that, and you're like, okay, like I think this is something that I can actually do, rather than scaring them away from a martial arts environment.
Yeah, there was one guy that really made an impression on me. He was a British guy. He was here in Malaysia, and he had been doing taekwondo, and he kept it a bit elusive, you know. And he came in for a class, and he just said, "Oh, I've been training taekwondo in UK. Can I pop along?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." He came in. He had his dobo ironed. Little touches, right? And I was like, all right, cool. He had his belt, and I was like, oh yeah, what belt do you have in taekwondo? He's like, oh, just fourth dan. I was like, fourth.
The humility he came in with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know if I've done it justice, but like he was just the most chill guy. Just like, mind if I pop in for a session?
That's what it shows. Like martial arts is not even about just the defense techniques. It's about your personality as well, like how you carry yourself outside of it as well.
Yeah, that was someone who, I mean, the Choi Kwando people I've met, I grew up in it, right? So I've known a lot of them for a long time. And when I've met them, it's been, sometimes it's a lot of people at once as well. It like workshops, seminars, and so on, and it can
especially at a young age, it can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. But that guy was like the first impression of just someone out of the blue. He'd been training in Taekwondo longer than I'd been training in Taekwondo. But just like so humble. I think that's the sort of thing that makes me think, oh, this is a real martial artist. He gets it before he's thrown a kick or a punch. The way he's presented himself and carried himself, that calmness, the like peacefulness, nailed it.
Because that's what really martial arts is all about. Like, you can easily learn how to punch and kick and then go out in the street and carry yourself as this really violent person. It's very easy to do that, but that's the hard part, is being disciplined and remaining like that, and remaining like a good martial artist rather than just being someone that knows how to fight. There's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So moving on a little bit in terms of, I think we've had a nice little frame of like what it is to be a Taekwondo instructor.
Yeah.
Right. And what it means to the students. Right. And so I think the next thing we can maybe talk about in terms of adversity is maybe we can talk a little bit about certain scenarios, certain situations, certain types of adversity. We can maybe reflect a little bit in our own experiences on that adversity. And then maybe we can talk a bit more about Taekwondo, the principles of Taekwondo, the lifestyle, and then also the community around it. Yeah. Cool. So, Savera, in terms of like you personally, you're 19 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So, especially as a teenager and looking at your childhood, is there anything you can share with us about adversity that you've experienced, and what was the challenge like, and then also how have you overcome it, because you present yourself as a very positive and confident person.
Thank you. It was, well, I grew up with quite a rough childhood. I ended up leaving home when I was 16. And it's one of those things where it was very hard. It was, especially because the main like reason was my parents, who are meant to be like these unconditional figures of support, and I didn't really have that growing up. And I think that's, just to bring Taekwondo back into it, I think because I started learning it when I was 8-9 years old, that's a very significant point of my life. So I think that's when I started learning discipline and self-control, and learning that, sort of having a positive mindset through it all. But it wasn't always like that. Like, I definitely had very much like ups and downs, very bad downs. And then I don't know what to say anymore, sorry. But
so maybe we can talk about when you were 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
What was some of the challenges from around that period, and how did they manifest into tangibles? Like, was it affecting your life at school? Was it affecting your relationships?
So when I was 8, that was when my parents like separated, and my dad wasn't in the picture at all. And I was very, very close to my dad, so that was a very big thing for me, especially. And then I guess I just had to get over it. Do you know what I mean? And then it kind of really properly hit me when I was in secondary school. Secondary school was a very tough time for me, especially year 10. A very tough time for me because it was kind of me figuring out myself. And then it's one of those things where if something was to happen at school, because I didn't have a stable home life, it's like my whole world would come crashing down, because at the time it was two different aspects that were very, very big aspects. I was a student, and I was also someone at home as well. But the someone at home was kind of mostly always a negative experience for me. So if something was to happen at school as well, it would be a very, very big thing. So year 10 specifically was quite a hard time for me. I lost a lot of friends. So I think I had to that was probably one of the hardest times of my life. And then getting through that was was hard, and I didn't really properly even open my eyes to it until a few months ago. Because when I moved out, I moved into a very calm environment, whereas I think when I was living at home, I was constantly on survival mode. So I think the adrenaline was always there. So when you're out of that environment, you then start seeing things like, oh, I have this and I have this and I have this. Like, I learned that I have anxiety, and I wouldn't be able to actually acknowledge that until I was out of an environment where I had to survive, essentially. And then when that all came to light, it was then another challenge, because even though I was out of the actual challenge of living at home, I now had to figure out how to be my own person with all these struggles that I've gained from living in a toxic environment. And that was very, very hard within itself. And I had very, very lovely people around me, very, very, very supportive. And I'm very lucky for that. And then, yeah, like I then left school, I started uni. And then only a few months ago, I say that people would tell me, oh, go to therapy, like, go do this, go do that. But when I was in school, because social services were involved in my life, I had to do counselling anyway. So school, I wasn't forced into it, but it was very much like, yeah, like you have to go. So I was going counselling, and I didn't always have a positive experience about it, because talking about it makes you really face it. You face it, and it's like, and it's a very, very, very hard thing. That's why people sometimes shy away from it, shy away from therapy, shy away from counselling, because you have to face it head on. And I had to do that, but being forced to go into counselling and voluntarily doing it would have different outcomes in it. Because if you're kind of, if you have to do something, you're going to talk about it, you're going to be there. Plus, I got to miss a couple lessons, so I was like, you know what? Do you know what I mean? Like, positives.
Skype.
Yeah, literally. So whereas when I opened my eyes that I had to actually do something about it for myself, that was only a couple months ago, and that was, so I'm 19. That was like year 10. I was 16, so like 3 years after the fact, and yeah, doing it for myself was a very, very big thing, because at that time, no one was telling me go and get some help. Because when people would say that to me, I'd be like, oh, fine, like, don't worry, like, I'll, like, whatever. And then when I actually went out, I ended up getting diagnosed, and then I was like, okay, this is an actual problem, I need to fix it, otherwise I'm never ever going to get better as a person. Then that's when things started looking up, and I would say that right now, currently in my life, alhamdulillah, I'm at a point where I'm a very positive part of my life. Yeah.
And you feel better.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing, eh? It's amazing how we can change the way that we feel.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you've managed to put some distance between you and the big challenges.
Mm-hmm.
3 years, it's quite a gap.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of bringing back a little bit to the point you said about your role as a daughter, you said, or your role at home, which I'm interpreting as like your role as a daughter, a granddaughter, and your role as a student. I think a lot of people can relate. This is like, these are universal experiences that we have.
Especially like I've heard in this generation as well, like it's especially like in social media, like TikTok, for example, it's very vocalized. People kind of vocalize their experiences a lot more, and you're kind of exposed to it, that people struggle at home and struggle in school as well. And I very, very, very much related to that. Like I was very much like that. I struggled in both aspects of it. So yeah, it is quite a common thing.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, like you said, your home environment, ultimately you want it to be your rock that gives you the stability to face adversity outside of home, right? And so how did you get through that period where you've basically a war on two fronts? You've got the challenges of, home, and then you've also got the challenges of school, and what was like the results? Like not in terms of like what were your grades, but like in terms of how did it go? Because it's a massive challenge.
I think it's that survival instinct. Like my grades, not to brag, but they were quite good because I knew that I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have, I wasn't able to, mess up in school and it'll be okay, because it wasn't going to be okay. I could have easily messed up in school, and you know, then there was no backup plan for me. There was no comfort for me. There was no, oh, it's going to be okay, because it wasn't like that. So I had to do it. I had to do it. But I think, not to even bring it back to Troy, but Troy was a very, very big part of my life, especially then. Like, my instructors were extremely supportive, and they were the main, one of them, he was the one that actually noticed it first, because he noticed a change in me for sure. And in year 10, like, it was a very low part of my life, I say that, and he was the first one that noticed it, because I was an instructor and I was teaching and I was around them quite a lot. They really, really noticed that from a safeguarding issue as well. Like, they really noticed it, and having support like that was extremely, extremely helpful, and I'm very, very lucky that it was like that as well.
And so what was your role then? So at that time, how old were you in year 10? I come from
Year 10, I was 15, so
15.
I was
So you're 15. Yeah, so you're 15, difficult age at school, right? You've got your role at home, your role at school. What role did you have in the Choi Kwan Do school that you were at? And can you explain it a little bit to people who aren't very familiar with Choi Kwan Do?
Yeah, so at 15, I was an AI.
Assistant instructor.
Yeah. I was quite a high assistant instructor, because I started when I was 9. I think I was past Ildan, so first degree black belt. And yeah, I was teaching. Well, at this time, I was helping teach kids classes, and I was also training. So I would help in the kids classes twice a week, because that's our schedule for our school. And yeah, that was my role.
So how many hours a week? Was it just one kid session?
No, so there was 2 kid sessions and then 1 adult session. But at that time, the adult session had mainly training. So it was 4 hours of teaching a week and then 2 hours of training.
Is that quite a big responsibility and quite a big commitment for a 15-year-old?
Yes, but not because of the hours. I think it was also because I had a lot of responsibility put on me anyways. Like, I had to, I remember there was times where I had to drop my sister to school, collect my sister from school, drop her to my nan's house, and go straight to Choi. So, and it would be quite tiring, because I'd have to come from school, go to my sister's school, pick her up. Thank God my nan's house was only 2 minutes away, but still, going there and then going on the train and then going to school and then teaching 2 classes. It was a big thing, but not really because of the Choi aspect of it, but mainly because of the other factors of my life as well. So I would say at that time I did struggle a little. I did struggle, not even a little, but I did struggle, because it felt like a lot. But mainly because I was at a point in my life where I wasn't able to prioritize, I wasn't able to organize, and everything was very, very, very overwhelming. So, and I said that I left home when I was 16. So when I was 15, it was a very major year in my life that made me actually want to leave. And yeah.
And so your experience in the dojang, right, in your Choi Kwan Do classes, with this very intense and overwhelming situation that you're in, what was it like? What was it like as a 15-year-old rocking up? You're going to be there for 3 hours with these people. You're going to be helping teach for 2 hours and then training for an hour.
I did struggle a lot on leaving my worries at the door. I think when I was started being an instructor, you do have a responsibility to not put that on your students, and I really didn't take into consideration that fact until I had to. My instructors were quite hard on that, because they were but they were also very understanding, which helped. So they would talk to me outside of Choi, but then when I was at Choi, it would be you have to be this instructor, and they were very, very reassuring and hard at the same time, which made me a great I'm not a great instructor, but in terms of made me the best that I could be in terms of that. So it really did help. And what's the question, sir?
I think we'll clarify. I think you are a pretty great instructor.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So how did it feel? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this leaving worries at the door.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that I remember about Choi Kondo in the first school that I trained at, which was called West Hill, which feels like a long time ago. I must have been about 5 or 6. And we used to do this exercise at the beginning of every class. The stretch was always the same. So I would have lost concentration after 5 minutes. But the first minute I remember, you'd sit there and you'd say, close your eyes, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. And there was this line, leave everything at the door. Forget about everything except for class. That was it. That was like a thing that we did. And
At
so
5 years old, you're just like, what does this mean?
do you mean? You mean I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to evolve my Charmander into Charmeleon at level 16 or level 17? Like that was my main concern. Thankfully, I can just leave it at the door for a few minutes. But yeah, it's massive in it. Leaving something at the door. It ends up being. I think it ends up being liberating, in the end.
I think it's mainly because your instructor really wants you to make sure that it's your time. All these worries and all these things, they're temporary. They're not going to last forever. So why are you going to worry about it when you're doing something that's benefiting you? Like going out of your way to go to a martial arts class to help yourself physically, and mentally. It is a very big thing mentally as well. Leaving worries at the door doesn't mean, no one cares about your worries. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about pause, calm, take a breather, come in, take some time for yourself. And then when it's as sad as it sounds, the worry's still going to be there when you leave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you might as well have an hour to yourself where it's peaceful, it's chill, and you're doing something that's benefiting you, which makes you feel ultimately better about yourself. Maybe you can, when you leave the dojo, you're then looking at the worry from a different perspective, from a different mindset, because you've had some time to not worry about it.
And you've done maintenance. You've given yourself an endorphin hit because you've done exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
You've also done exercise guided with supervision. You've maybe learned something. You've maybe smashed some pads. Little smashing of the pads now and again. It does help release the stress.
For sure. I remember when I was again going through a lot of stuff, and then I had a shield. I had an instructor hold a shield for me actually, and I was really going at the shield, and she kind of realized that there was something I needed, that shield drill, and she just spoke to me, and she was like, "Look, you're doing really well." And I'll never forget that. She was very, very, very lovely, and the fact that I wasn't judged at all. It was more like she's a mother actually, so she saw it from a motherly perspective, and she saw that, okay, this child is going through something and she just needs this to release some energy. And then she was very, very supportive, and I specifically remember that moment. Very nice lady.
Yeah, there's a couple of students that I think of when I think of leaving at the door. One was a boy, and I think he was very misunderstood, and a very bright boy, just sometimes didn't get what he should do in a certain situation, and sometimes took things a bit personally and had a big reaction. Wonderful boy, and he was having a real hard time at school, and I had a very hard time at school. I felt a bit misunderstood as well. I was naughty, but I felt a bit misunderstood. And so I connected with this boy who was coming into class, and I found that sometimes the ones who are the kind of out of kilter, they're not quite in the right way. Sometimes you put them in charge and they sort themselves out straight away, because they get that opportunity. They feel seen, they feel valid, their confidence,
and they have some
boosted.
responsibility that they need to take on.
Yeah, and they sometimes taking the one who is everyone would think that they have some behavioral problem. You give them a little bit of responsibility, put the spotlight on them, and then you see, wow, this is peak performance for this person. They might not be able to be in the drill well because, or the game or whatever, because, you know, they hate losing. But they can coach other people very well. They can guide other people in it very well. Little things like that. So that was a case of, like, for me, being aware of what was going on at school, relating to it, but then also being like, we're not going to have that judgment, you know, valid here. We're not going to try and carry that here. But I understood that for a kid, it's very stressful.
And it's nice that you were able to resonate with him because you had your own experiences that you were able to recognize that within your student. And I think that's a really big thing for instructors when they can see a student, because obviously they were students once themselves. They were also children once themselves. So when they see a student and see a child, especially walk into the dojo and they see them having specific problems and being able to be a supportive figure for them is a really, really big thing. Because that was like that was how it was for me. When I would go into the dojo, my instructors were supportive, very supportive figures for me. So I think I would love to be that for other students as well. Like I think one thing I actually really do appreciate is when you ask a student how they are. You know, you get the cliche answer, yeah, I'm good, thanks, whatever. But then when a student's actually honest with you and they're like, look, no, like I had a problem at school, it actually makes me think, okay, I'm doing something right, because I've built that trust with them enough for them to want to talk to me about it. So, and then I take them to the side and obviously speak to them about it, because it's going to be again, leaving that worry at the door. It's a very hard thing to take it out your mind, put it at the door, and then walk in. A very, very, very hard thing. Like I struggled with it immensely myself. So especially for a young student as well, it's a big thing. And once they talk about it, then they're able to do their training with a clear mind.
Yeah,
that's all they need. Like maybe like a 2-minute conversation.
Yeah, I think that these issues are the important issues of teaching. I mean, you'll have seen how many little diagrams and curriculum documents and stuff. I'm like, that stuff is already thought about.
A robot can do that.
Exactly.